Hi, welcome to the Flawed Theology podcast. I'm Phil.
And I'm Susie, and we're asking the question, if your theology were wrong, wouldn't you want to know?
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to whatever episode this is on season 2. I think I mixed them up in the last recording, so we're going to just...
This is episode 2.
Episode 2, yeah, of season 2. So hope you guys enjoyed the season premiere. Just a quick reminder about a couple of things we mentioned in the first episode, I think real briefly, about the Facebook group Dangerous Questions. So we definitely would love to have you guys join us there to have some conversations and ask questions and talk smack if you want, whatever.
Whatever you want.
There's not a whole bunch of structure to the group, so we hope it's just kind of a safe space for people to ask questions and talk about stuff. And
it's a very small group right now, so it's nice and intimate.
Yeah, so it's pretty fun. People post some good stuff in there. And another reminder to send us in your flawed theology in real life stories or good human of the week stories. You can send us to them through the Facebook group or through the email, which is flawedtheology@gmail.com, or Instagram or Twitter or any number of the modalities we have. All right, so this week we do have a very special guest who's going to join us later. So we're going to do our flawed theology in real life segment first, and we're going to do this one's going to be short compared to last week. Anyway, someone had posted basically a screen capture of someone posted. I'm just going to read what it says. Just learned our 9-year-old did an experiment on us. Lost a tooth, told nobody for 3 days, kept tooth under his pillow, no money. Then he tells us he lost the tooth. Next night, there's money under his pillow. Then he confronted us with his scientific evidence that the tooth fairy isn't real.
I love this so much.
I'd love to meet this kid.
I know.
It's fantastic. So the first comment underneath this thing, which there's like 734 comments on this post, this person says, I would have punished my child if she did that. If the tooth fairy is not real, Jesus Christ is not real. It's that simple. Which is
it that simple? I don't understand this comment at all on many levels.
Yeah, it's the flaw to me is like obviously not in the original post. The original person was pointing out actually the value of critical thinking and how their child had used the scientific method to test a hypothesis, got his results. And the response to the post is really where the flaw is.
Right.
Because this parent says that they would have punished their kid if they did that. Why? For thinking critically?
Yes, for thinking outside of what the mother or father had told them. Yeah. Right? I'm the mother. I tell you the tooth fairy is real.
Right.
Don't question me.
Yeah, and the kid was assertive and didn't just accept and believe what their parents told them.
Yeah. If
kids and adults would use this kind of strategy to test the truth value of things, we'd probably be in a different world. People would actually have evidence for the things that they claim to be true. So the responder does make one valid point, though, which I'm sure they didn't realize, and it's the root of why many people have walked away from faith entirely. If the tooth fairy isn't real, of which there's no evidence, well, then Jesus Christ isn't real. And by Jesus Christ, it doesn't mean the historical person, Jesus. They're talking about God, obviously.
Right. But no, I don't even understand this part. Like, what is the logical connection between the tooth fairy and Jesus? Well,
they're saying that, like, the tooth fairy is, something from mythology, right? So then if you say she's making a real logical leap, like by saying, okay, well, if you compare the tooth fairy, which I've told my kids is real, then if I tell them that the tooth fairy is not real, well, I've also told them that Jesus is real.
Right, but that doesn't mean that everything that the mother says is real isn't real. That doesn't negate everything.
Right.
There's just like, why is there a logical connection for this person between tooth fairy and Jesus?
Right.
It's the critical thinking that she's saying is the bad part.
Right.
This is what I don't understand is, does the mother believe in the tooth fairy?
Well, that's the real kicker. Like, that means this woman, grown ass woman or man,
I'm assuming, let's just keep it woman,
must believe that the tooth fairy is real because they're using the same criteria to determine if something is real or not for Jesus that they do for the tooth fairy.
So she must believe in the tooth fairy.
That's what I would logically think, that she must believe in the tooth fairy. This is kind of a humorous flawed theology in real life, but it points out like a real problem that like critical thinking is something that is to be punished. Especially in children, you're sending the message that it's not okay for my kid to critically think and to ask questions,
Yes.
All right. So this has been the Flawed Theology in Real Life segment. We want to point out when we see theology that's wrong, and we want you to know I feel like we should make that like a newscast thing. Like,
Ooh.
when you see Flawed Theology, let us know. Call the tip line now. We set up like a Flawed Theology tip line. That'd be awesome.
I think you just nailed it. I'm just going to edit that part. I'm going to get it. I'm going to get some fun music.
Yes, put some like reverb on it, and that'll be awesome. Flawed Theology tip line. When you see Flawed Theology, let us know. Call the tip line now. All right, everybody. Well, we're insanely excited to introduce our guest today. Honestly, I can't even believe that he agreed to be on the show. But having followed his story, I think Susie and I both feel like we've gotten to know him a little bit through his books, through his podcast, and the documentary that he did, learning his story. And so because of who he is, it kind of doesn't surprise me, and it surprises me at the same time. This season, we started a segment called the Good Human of the Week. And the point of that has been to highlight the idea that you can be a good person and live a life of morality and goodness without religion. So we're going to combine that segment today with our guest and make the entire episode basically a Good Human of the Week segment. So we're excited to have Mr. Bart Campola with us. Thanks for being here.
Hey, Bart.
Well, hey to both of you. And gosh, Phil, I'm a little concerned about your self-esteem. And you're like, I'm surprised. I'm surprised that somebody would want to talk to me.
Well, it's mostly just because we're a fledgling show.
Yeah.
It's kind of new. So every time we get someone that anyone else has heard of, we're
shocked.
Oh, they actually want to be on our show. Cool. So we're still kind of in that honeymoon phase.
Yeah. I mean, and you definitely slipped through my usual filter. So yeah. It's okay.
Oh, that's good. Well, we appreciate it a lot. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about you and like what you do?
It's interesting because I do a variety of things now. I spent most of my life as a professional Christian, and that was a good gig. When I left that world, I mean, it's bad enough for people to deconstruct. It's even worse if it was your job, right? Because you find yourself like 45, 48 years old, whatever I was. And you're like, okay, I don't have a faith community and I don't have a job.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think one of the first things I figured out was, my faith had been dying slowly over many years. And so my commitment to ministry hadn't died at all. Like the idea of trying to reach out to people whose lives who were struggling and draw them into fellowship with nice people that would help them make more of their lives. Like that always made sense to me. So when I came out, I was trying to figure out, okay, what does it look like to be a minister who doesn't believe in God? Like, what do you do? And, I thought like I would just like join one of those secular congregations of people that were pursuing loving kindness simply because it's the most rational and sensible response to the reality of life. But I couldn't find those groups.
Right.
Because they kind of didn't exist. I mean, I could find atheist clubs.
Right.
Like a bunch of angry people carrying Richard Dawkins books around telling me how stupid everybody is. And I went to some of them and I wasn't inspired because don't get me wrong, they were nice people and they were having interesting conversations. But believe me, I'd already figured out enough reasons why I didn't believe in God. Like I tried so hard to keep believing in God that when I finally gave up the Holy Ghost, I had tried everything. So there was nothing so that wasn't an issue for me. I didn't need to be affirmed in my non-belief.
Yeah.
Okay.
I wanted to figure out what do you do now?
Right.
How do you pursue love as a way of life in a secular framework?
Right.
At some point, a buddy of mine gave me a book called Good Without God, which sort of fits into your good person of the week thing. And it was written by this guy named Greg Epstein, who was the humanist chaplain at Harvard. And as he described the humanist chaplaincy at Harvard, like this group of students he was working with, like I got excited. I was like, oh, that's the kind of work I had done my whole life was, recruiting young people to live lives of meaning and purpose. And so I flew out to Boston and spent a weekend hanging around with Greg and as I saw what he's doing, I was like, I could do this. This is like running a youth group. And Greg said, I got a friend out in Los Angeles who's the dean of religious life at USC. They're looking for a humanist chaplain like they want to establish a humanist chaplaincy like we've got here. You should call him. And so I reached out and eventually I became the humanist chaplain at USC, which was the single greatest job I ever had, except that it didn't pay any money.
Oh, okay.
Like it was a perfect job.
Right. So that was something that they created basically because they had heard that this is something that maybe they wanted to develop, and that's how you got landed out there. But it wasn't like a paid position. It was just like, come do it.
Yeah, I mean, you grew up in that Christian world, right?
Yes.
So where did you go? Did you go to college?
Yes.
Where'd you go?
To Liberty.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah. All right. So they have homegrown on most college campuses that are not like run by hyper fundamentalist Christians.
Right.
There are all these Christian groups on campus. There's InterVarsity Christian Fellowship. There's the Navigators.
Yeah.
Right. There's Campus Crusade for Christ, which is now Cru. And then there's also always usually there's the Catholic Student Center. There's the Jewish Hillel Center. There's a Muslim group so at a campus like USC, there were like 50 different ministries on the campus.
Right.
And they have a dean of religious life who sort of oversees all that work. Well, they don't pay all those chaplains.
Okay.
The InterVarsity people raise their money. The Catholic Church supports the Catholic chaplaincy. Everybody has their own sort of basis of support.
Right.
The problem for me was there was no religious infrastructure to start the things with.
Right.
So the dean there, he said, "Hey, if you come here, I can give you an office. I'll give you business cards. I give you a title. You're the humanist chaplain at USC. It's sounds pretty prestigious."
Yeah.
And we're in LA, so there were like lots of rich secular people there. So his thought was, hey, you build this ministry on the campus with secular young people, and then you just be able to raise money. And I thought, yeah, I've raised money before, but boy, it's really different trying to raise money to fund outreach to secular college students than it was in the Christian world.
Right. It's like a whole different can of worms. Yeah.
Yeah. And bottom line is like, I'd say like, hey, do you want to support my chaplaincy? And they're like, wait a second. You're nurturing the spiritual lives of the richest, most well-heeled secular students in America. Like why would we want to give you any money?
Right. You're like, because I'd like to eat. That's probably.
Well, the main thing was I was like, look, if you want to make the world a better place, the thing to do would be to put somebody on a college campus that's taking young people with all these gifts and abilities who are going to go run companies and run Hollywood and run all these things and challenge them to make their lives about more than just making rich people richer. Mm-hmm. So when I was the humanist chaplain there, I wasn't interested in like debating Christians.
Right.
I wasn't interested in trying to deconvert as many Christians as I could. Mm-hmm. That's what the other chaplains were worried about. They thought like, oh, I was coming to like lay waste.
Okay.
I wasn't interested in that. It was like half the campus doesn't believe in God. I want to challenge those young people and say like, hey, if you're really convinced that this is the only life that you have, how do you make the most of it?
Right.
And in particular, using evidence-based stuff, using, data, science, whatever reason, the most reasonable thing to do with your life is to build loving relationships and to make things better for other people and to cultivate a sense of wonder and gratitude for the privilege of human consciousness. And you go like, wait, do you have science and data to support that? I was like, lots of it, lots of
it.
So I did that for 3 years until my wife and I couldn't hack LA. It's a very expensive place to live if you're not making any money.
Right.
And so while I was there doing that good work, I became kind of well known as a secular sort of thoughtful person. And I'd started this podcast. And what happened was lots of people would reach out to me via the podcast and say, hey, I'm really struggling in my transition out of Christianity. Like you have found meaning and purpose. I haven't found it yet. Or you have a decent relationship with your parents. My parents won't speak to me and I don't know what to do about that. And so I ended up sort of coaching people who were struggling all over the world. And eventually my wife was like, you should go back to school and like become a therapist because like that's a way that you could actually make a living helping people in this way. We ended up after 3 years at USC, couldn't afford LA. We moved back to our hometown or like our adopted hometown of Cincinnati. And we moved back in here and I'm a therapist now. Like I'm a legit therapist, but I still run the podcast. And nowadays I spend most of my free time trying to foster, I guess what you would call humanizing communities, like trying to help people gather together around the agenda of making the most of their lives and find the kind of fellowship that most of the ex-Christians I know miss a lot. Mm-hmm. They don't miss the theology. Mm-mm. Right. They don't miss, hating gay people, but they really miss the music and the coverage suppers and the missions trips and the sense of raising their children with other people that share their values. And that stuff, that kind of technology like that's available to anybody who knows how to do it. And so I'm trying to help secular people figure out how they can build communities that meet those kind of needs. That's a way longer answer than you wanted.
It's perfect.
No, that's awesome. So I sent someone your way that Susie and I both know from a couple of Facebook groups, and he's really struggling with his coming away from Christianity. He just got so many questions. And I was like, who could probably help you? Bart could probably help you, because you just need somebody to talk to who's going to listen to you and who's going to give you some kind of guidance, along the way. So that's fantastic, I think.
I have so many questions. Can we go back a little bit to the part where you were saying when you first came out of Christianity, you didn't feel like you needed to affirm your disbelief? To me, that sounds like you didn't need to hone your arguments or like learn, this is why this is not true, X, Y, Z. And I love that you didn't have to learn that. I feel like I had to learn that. I had to be able to justify my unbelief to my family, because when you come out of religion and you have a religious family, they think you're lost. And I felt like I had to be able to defend myself against that claim of being lost. How do you balance that?
Susie, those are two different things you're talking about there.
Yes, they are.
On the one hand, explaining why you don't believe in Christianity, that's not really that hard. Like, you just go like, 'cause I don't. Like, you just go like, hey, dad, do you, like, if I put a gun to your head and said, I'm going to kill you and all your family, if you can't believe in Islam, could you do it? Could you pass a lie detector test? And he goes like, no, I don't find that belief system plausible. Even Christianity, even within Christianity, there are Bible verses that go like, this stuff is foolishness to those who don't believe. Like, this is crazy. Like, talk about virgin births and flying Jesus and people rising from the dead and Red Sea. Like it's not hard to explain. Like, I just don't find that credible. And the truth is, like, they may say to you, like, how could you not believe in God? It's so crystal clear. But I was a pastor for 30 years. Okay. There's no Christian that at some point doesn't go, wait a second, the God of the Old Testament is really different than the God of the New Testament. Or wait a second, the four Gospels don't even line up with each other. Wait a second, what the hell is going on there with that Ananias and Sapphira story where the forgiving God kills the two people who don't, because they don't give all their money?
Yeah.
It's a crazy narrative. Okay. That part of it is not hard. The hard part is then the person goes like, oh my God, you're lost.
Yeah.
Now you're probably going to want to go and become like an axe murderer, or, like you have no basis for your morality.
Devil worshiper.
All these things. So the harder challenge is not explaining why I don't believe in what is inarguably a difficult narrative to believe. That's why it takes faith, because it's not so straightforward. What's really difficult for most Christians to understand is, how are you possibly going to live a meaningful life on the outside? Susie, you're not convinced. I'm looking at you, Susie. You're not
I'm
convinced.
formulating my next thought. You could say that to your religious dad or mom and say, I'm sorry, I just don't believe it. Put a gun to my head. You can't force yourself to believe in unicorns or whatever.
I can't believe. It's not I won't. It's not I won't, Susie. It's not I won't. I can't. But they're still going to tell you you're wrong.
Right.
And I feel like if I have like, oh, but did you know that the Noah's Ark story was just the Epic of Gilgamesh, and there's all these references from the Odyssey.
And what I say, Susie, is I waste no time.
I know.
Trying to show them why the Bible isn't true. Believe me, because when you attack somebody's faith like that, they just double down.
Yeah.
It's not just that it's a waste of time. It's an ineffective tactic as well. Like it's not kind and it's not effective. Like if I'm sitting with my dad or my friends or whatever, I'm like, I absolutely understand how you could believe in Christianity. Duh, I believed in it for 20 some odd years, right? Obviously, I don't think you're stupid to believe in Christianity. If you're raised in that system, I think the belief system is crazy. I think believing in that belief system is entirely logical if you were raised in that community. Mm-hmm. If you were raised in a village in Afghanistan, you would probably be a Muslim. Like everybody you know and love and trust tells you this is true.
Plausibility structure, right?
That's how, exactly. That's how we get socialized. So the fact that somebody believes in Christianity is that's not irrational at all. To believe every reliable source you've ever known. That's not irrational.
Mm-hmm.
The belief system itself is irrational, but that's another story. So like, I'm not going to say to somebody, listen, let me poke 17 holes in what you're believing in.
Yeah.
I'm not going to waste my time. What I'm going to say is, I see how you can believe in that. You recognize that's not the only belief system, right? And they go like, yeah. You recognize that there are Buddhists and there are Muslims and there are atheists and there are all sorts of people. And they go, yeah. And they go like, and you can't believe in their narratives, can you? And they're like, no. But you understand why they believe in them, right? And they're like, sure, they were raised that way. They're like, they're wrong, but they understand. Like, and they go like, so here's the thing. I can't believe in yours anymore. Like, and believe me, I've tried. I really wanted to stay a Christian. Christianity worked for me. Mm-hmm. I knew I had nice friends. It made my parents happy. Everything was beautiful, right? You know, my mom will say like, look, there are many things I'm not sure about. The one thing I'm sure about is that when Bart says he doesn't believe in God, he's deeply sincere. Mm-hmm. Like he tried everything because I had nothing to gain. And
you had everything to lose.
Right. Yeah. So I go like, I can't do it. Okay. I can't in good conscience do it. Now I could pretend to be doing it. Right. But like the God you believe in, would he not see through my fakery? Right. The God who knows my heart. So like, the question we have to ask ourselves is, what does your God want me to do? Because I don't believe it. I don't believe, and I can't believe, and I can't lie. And I does he want me to lie, or does he want me to go and like rape, pillage, and murder, or does he want me to like try to live out the same values that you're living out in a secular way? Like, what would make him happier?
In so many areas of life, like arguing your point and debating, we know it doesn't work, but there's some kind of part of us that thinks, well, if I just have enough proof, it's going to convince someone else. But very rarely does that work. And we know that. We've talked with Anthony Magnabosco, which I'm not sure if you know. Like he uses a technique called street epistemology.
Oh, I'm old friends with Anthony. Yeah.
Oh, you're friends with Anthony?
Yeah, we argue about this shit all the time because
nice.
Because Anthony will pretend that he's not trying to undermine people's faith, but he's absolutely trying to undermine people's faith.
Yeah, and he's trying to cause them to get to think and question their belief structure and how they arrive at truth, which is still trying to change someone's mind on some level. But your take is a little bit different. Like, you don't waste your time with that. It's more like, well, what do I do now? And how shall I now live?
The only people I want to deconvert are people that are suffering in Christianity, people for whom it's not working. When I was at USC, sometimes a student would come to me and say, I'm thinking of joining your group because I've been a Christian my whole life, but I have gay friends and the church, you know, like, I just can't do the gay thing anymore. And so I'm giving up Christianity. And I'm like, kid, you don't want to give up Christianity. I said, well, he says, what are you talking about? I said, your mother's a Christian. Your father's a Christian. Your girlfriend's a Christian. You love being a Christian. No one's told you that there's a way of being a Christian. Like, there are verses that you just have to ignore this verse and interpret this verse this way, and you can still be a Christian. There's whole Christian churches that affirm gay people. Let me introduce you to the gay and lesbian affirming Christian movement. And he's like, why are you trying to help me be a believer? And I'm like, because you are a believer. Mm-hmm. I said, now, if you came to me and you were like, I don't think this stuff works for me anymore, and I feel like God hates me, and I'd be like, you know, there's another way of being a good person. Like, if this isn't working, I said, but like, I don't ride a Harley Davidson anymore, but I still know how to fix one, right? And if your Harley Davidson only has like the kickstand broken, we should just fix it. Now, if the whole thing is broken down like mine was, then I will show you a new way, a new kind of motorcycle, and a new way of pursuing goodness. But the fact of the matter is that there's no guarantee that when somebody leaves Christianity, that they're going to be able to put together a new narrative that gives meaning and purpose to their life, and that they're going to find friendship and fellowship, and that they're going to be able to construct a life that is as meaningful to them as their Christian life was. And so if you're going to fuck with somebody's Christianity, you better be damn sure you have something better to offer them. And I mean practically, you know, because for a lot of people, staying Christian is a real practical matter. It's like, this is my marriage, this is my family, this is my job. And so, you know, I'm just really careful about that. And the thing is, like, why are you wasting your time over there? There's all these people here that don't believe in God, who are living empty, meaningless lives. And the real question is, how do I evangelize those people if this is all there is? If this is just a natural process and this is all there is? Like, it is an unbelievably improbable thing that you are a human being.
Yeah.
Like, this is an amazing opportunity. You have a very short period of time of consciousness. It's a gift. Even if it's from nobody, it's a gift.
Yeah.
What are you going to do with it? And so the question is, like, how do you make the most of this bounty? And I'm not going to waste any of my time trying to screw up somebody else when there are people out there that are doing nothing. That I'm like, look, lonely person, come and join my group. Look, sad person, here's a way of deriving more joy out of life. Once you embrace the idea that meaning is not something that you find, it's something that you create by caring about other people, then let's make some meaning together so that your life feels more meaningful.
Yeah.
So I'm not looking to pick any fruit unless it's ripe and ready to be harvested. And that's how I feel about people who are struggling in their faith. Like, there comes a moment where they're like, help me. And then I'm like, okay, I'm here to help.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a fine line, and you're starting to elucidate this for me. There is a fine line between when your family comes to you and says you're lost, and you say, no, I'm not lost. It's reasonable to not believe because of XYZ. How do you do that without trying to undermine their faith?
You see, when they say you're lost, I mean, when I told my dad I'm done, he knew better than to think he was going to talk me back into it.
Did he? Really?
I mean, come on. Like, I've been an evangelist for 30 years. Like, I'm a more sophisticated theological mind than he is.
Yeah.
So he knows he's not going to talk me back into this stuff. You know what his questions was? How are you going to raise your kids? What are you going to do for a living? Who are going to be your friends?
Okay.
I had to get really good at saying, hey, all those values that I learned in church, I am so grateful for those. Like, I am convinced that loving kindness is the best way to live. And so what I'm going to do, Dad, is I'm going to use not just the one book that you got. I'm going to use all the books, and I'm going to study them and try to figure out what I can learn from these books that will help me to be a better husband and a better father and a better friend and a better son. And I'm going to devote myself to creating fellowship for people who are lonely and lost in the world. I said, you know, you see all these non-Christians on a college campus. Would you rather have them be in a fraternity or a sorority drinking themselves to death and having meaningless sex? Or would you rather have them join my group and be talking about how they can use their lives to experience more transcendence and more meaning and more joy in the world? He's like, I would rather have them be in your group. I go, like, yeah, that's right. So, like, I still have a mission. I still have a purpose in life. And when I die and I look back, I want to believe that, like, because of the way I live my life, somebody else is experiencing a higher degree of joy, that somebody else has friends that they would have never had before. And that sounds unselfish, but it's not, because I've done the studying, and my brain is hardwired. We're a tribal animal. We're a social species. And so when I see another member of my tribe thrive, endorphins drop in my brain. And if I feel like I'm somehow responsible for it, I feel even more joy and happiness. So yeah, this is just enlightened self-interest, Dad. I want to live for love because it's the best way. And, you know, then sometimes if I want to really tie it all up, I'll say, like, listen, I know that you think that religion invented morality, but if you study all the religions of all the world, they all emerged out of tribal communities where people developed values that worked for them as a tribe. And then they codified those values and created stories to communicate those values, because those values are just the best way to live. And that's why in every culture, the golden rule emerges. That's why in every culture, incest is outlawed. Some things work for humans and some things don't work for humans. And so I know you think that I can't be moral without religion, but the truth of the matter is that there was morality before there was a religion. In fact, morality grew out of religion. But so this is what I want to do. This is how I want to live my life. And all of a sudden my father breathes easier. And he goes like, oh, okay. I was worried that you were going to be out there alone and sad and lonely and living a meaningless life. And that relieved him. And he goes like, I wish you were in my tribe, but as long as you're in a tribe.
Okay. I don't think all parents would respond like that.
No, and I'll tell you the difference, Susie, is my parents had a theology, which I did at the end of my Christian life. I started out a fundamentalist. My orthodoxy died the death of 1,000 cuts, very slow process. Long before I left Christianity, I was okay with gay marriage. Long before I left Christianity, I believed that God was going to save everybody in the end. I'd given up on the idea that there was a God who loves you infinitely and will burn you forever if you don't accept that love. It made no sense to me. Right. My parents had made that same journey. So while they're still Christians, they're not worried that God's going to kill me forever if I don't have the right theology. If you know somebody who really believes that in their heart of hearts, it's a huge tragedy for them when you're on the outside. And moreover, Susie, it's not just a tragedy because they've lost you. You've also become toxic and dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to let my children be around you because you might drag them into hell with you. And so I don't believe that. But if I did, if I believed that somebody could destroy my children, if they just became friends with them, I would probably put a barrier between that person and my children.
Yeah.
So the difference is the parents that can't accept it, a lot of times it's really rooted in the exclusive salvation that they believe can only be acquired through their faith.
You're right. We both have sets of parents that believe in that.
Yeah.
So I recently sent my mom your book, which was a huge deal because we never talk about religion. Since I told her I was an atheist,
yeah,
we've had maybe 2 very short conversations and she cries every time.
Yeah.
And I sent her a picture of the front of your book, why I left, why I stayed. And I said, I'm almost done with this book and it's really good. And I think that it could open up conversations for us. And it's not like going to be an attack on you because it's, both sides are covered. And it's not going to be an attack on me because both sides are covered. No response yet. I think she's still processing.
Yeah.
But my hope is that I can use either your book or your documentary, Leaving My Father's Faith, to help open that door.
Yeah. Just to be clear, a couple of things. First of all,
yeah.
I wrote that book with my dad.
Yes.
That documentary I did not make. It was a guy named John Wright.
Okay.
Who enlisted my father, and I said, I want to try to tell your story. I really liked the way he told the story, but I can't take credit for it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you were in it.
Yeah. He just made me talk a lot.
Yeah.
Now here's what I would say to you though, Suze.
Yeah.
This is the place where I'm really good with my Bible, because the Bible is a kind of a language. Christianese is a kind of a language. So sometimes when you want to talk to somebody, you have to talk to them in their own language, because there's a whole case to be made in the Bible that God will ultimately extend salvation to everyone, that every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that Jesus Christ is Lord on heaven, on earth, and underneath the earth. Like that ultimately everyone will accept Jesus. There's a big case to be made that as in Adam, all men died, so in Christ, all will be made alive.
Mm-hmm.
There's a great case to be made that we have put our faith in the living God, who is the Savior of all men, and especially those who believe. Not only those who believe, especially those who believe. There's a great case to be made throughout the scriptures of an openness of God's salvation. And I've learned all those verses. So when I'm talking to somebody like your mom or your dad, I say to them, Mom, if I understand Christianity well, no Christian can judge. Human beings are basically told, don't judge. Judge not, lest you be not judged. Like the judgment lies up with God, like who gets in and who doesn't. And I guess what I'm wondering, Mom, is like, do you think there's any chance that God's graciousness extends farther than you might think? That he maybe actually is able to do abundantly more than you could ever hope or pray or expect. So my question isn't whether or not you think that I'm going to hell. My question is, do you hope that I go to heaven? Do you hope that God saves me in the end? That he turns me on, and when I die, he goes like, look, it was me. Your mom was right. And I bow on my knees and confess, I had no idea. I was confused. But now that I see you in your glory, I love you. You're all about love. I'm all about love. Mom, I'm just wondering, if God could find a way to save me, would you want him to? And she'll probably say yes. And I go well, then can't we just agree to hope for that? Mm-hmm. To hope that maybe God's grace is more I don't want to limit God. And so I'm not able to believe in God, but I know you are. And will you pray for me? Will you hope for me? Will you imagine for me that God could save me? And, most Christians I know go I don't want you to go to hell. And I go well, all I'm asking is, can you leave space for the idea that maybe God's better than you think he is?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because Mom, Hitler and Gandhi. Hitler was a Christian. Gandhi wasn't. Don't you think Jesus would want to make room for Gandhi?
Yeah.
Lovely man. Yeah, I think he would want to. And I go well, okay, then let's just maybe he can. but there's this verse here that says that maybe he can. So I've become very good at making a biblical case for the salvation of everybody ultimately. And the reason I do that is because there are a lot of Christian parents who would love to embrace their Christian kids, and they can't because of the dead man walking thing. And so if you can at least give them a glimmer of hope, you're giving them a place to stand while they accept you.
And you're not undermining their faith. You're not saying, absolutely, I'm not going to go to hell because there is no hell and all your beliefs are wrong. It's meeting them where they are and finding a way to make it work without undermining their faith. I like that.
Yeah. And that's something I think you can do.
To me, it feels like there's a large percentage of Christians that they don't want to accept a God, or they don't want to believe in a God that actually will accept anyone. Because then, if that's the case, they've been making all these sacrifices and living a certain way for nothing. If everybody gets in, well, then why the fuck have I been living like this? I could have been.
It's like studying for a month for a test that everybody just gets an A on.
Right. Yeah.
The teacher's like, I'm feeling generous today.
It's a big curve, So I really liked the idea. And that's where my journey out of Christianity was. Like, I went the progressive route, let go of hell, embrace gay people, and believe that everyone could be saved, and I was very much into social justice causes and things like that. And then I realized, well, I don't need a deity to do any of these things to be a good human. And I think before I even fully deconverted, I was a humanist and didn't know it or didn't use that term. In your view, do you think that humanism, like you've kind of already explained kind of what humanism is a little bit, but like, do you?
Well, no, I've explained to you what humanism is to me.
Yes.
Humanism is just like Christianity, where you could meet 20 different Christians and you get 20 totally different understandings of what it means to be a Christian.
Yeah.
For me, like, I adopted humanism as my language just because it was like better than all the, it's not a particularly great term. It's just better than atheist, which doesn't tell you anything,
right?
Except what I don't believe in. And in our modern culture is sort of seen as hostile to Christianity. Mm-hmm. I don't want to identify myself as hostile. Agnostic makes it sound like I don't know. And technically that is true. I don't know.
Nobody does.
Can't prove anything. But like on a day-to-day basis, I'm really confident in how I think the world works. Have you ever heard me joke about Justin Bieber?
No.
Oh yeah, because I was joking. I always say, like, look, I'm also agnostic. I'm agnostic about God, but I'm also agnostic about whether or not Justin Bieber has deposited $1 million in a Swiss bank account with my name on it. Really, Justin Bieber has that kind of money. Mm-hmm. There are Swiss bank accounts. My name is in the phone book. Mm-hmm. And so, like, theoretically, I'm a millionaire. And I can't prove to you that I'm not. All I can prove to you is I don't make a single decision based on that $1 million.
Uh-huh. I like that.
I can't prove to you that there's no God, but I don't make a single decision in my life based on the idea that there's some kind of almighty that's that's orchestrating things. Right. I live as though there is. So I'm not agnostic, practically speaking.
Yeah.
I'm not a free thinker. Free thinker, like, makes it sound like I get to decide what I believe. And if there's anything I've learned about cognition, it's that you don't have nearly as much choice over what you believe as you might think. Where you're born, what kind of brain you got, what kind of cognitive biases, whether they've had a head injury. I mean, if you know anything about human beings, it's like I can fool you into believing all sorts of stuff. So, like, no, I'm not a free thinker. And you go, like, a skeptic. And I go, like, wow, what a negative word. Like, hi, bring me anything. And I'm going to, I don't know.
Yeah.
So, like, humanist simply says, like, look, I'm really committed to the human experience. I'm committed to living, dying, and trying to make meaning in between those things. And I'm committed to my species. Like, if the aliens come to Earth, I'm going to fight to save the other humans. Like, if the cockroaches come up, I'm going to fight to save the other humans. If the aliens come and they're trying to kill both the cockroaches and the humans, then the cockroaches and us can be allies. But my ultimate loyalty is to the humans. And frankly, within the humans, I've got even some smaller circles of care that, like, if it comes down to my kids eating or your kids eating, like, I'm going to let your kids go.
Yeah.
Like, I just got to be honest. So, I'm a humanist because that's, like, I'm committed. And the reason I call myself that is because I want people to know, like, not what I'm not committed to, but what I am committed to.
Right.
And you go, like, but you're a secular humanist. I'm like, yeah, I don't believe in God. Right. Good.
Yeah.
Next.
It's not quite the big deal that you think it is. Like,
and like, if you were going to join my group at USC, the Secular Student Fellowship, and I had kids, we would table and we would put up a sign that said, are you a humanist? And a kid would come by and say, what's a humanist? I'm like, well, different people tell you different things. But, like, for us, a humanist means that, like, we think this life is the only one we have. And we think the best way to spend it is to build loving relationships, to do work that makes things better for other people, and to cultivate wonder and appreciation and gratitude for, like, the wonder of human experience, like, to understand how the brain works. Like, this stuff is amazing. And they were like, yeah, I'm down with all that. And then they would say, okay, so what do I have to believe? Like, that's what I value. I value all those things, but what do I have to believe? Like, you don't have to believe anything for which you don't have any evidence. Like, we don't care what you believe. What we care about is what you're committed to.
Right.
If you don't believe in God and you just want to go and bang as many unsuspecting freshmen as you can this weekend and then go make a bunch of money selling stock options that you know are going to cause a lot of people to lose their jobs, you don't belong in our group. You don't share our values.
So it's more about like not what you believe, but what you do
or what you try to do.
Right. Or yeah, what you view as what's important. Yeah.
Like probably both of you value exercise, right? You think like that would be a good idea.
Right.
But like, do you do it?
Sometimes.
I value a lot of things and I struggle to do them. I value forgiveness, but sometimes I'm not very forgiving. So the reason why we gather together is because one of the things that we've learned is that like if you value losing weight, good luck to you. But if you join a Weight Watchers group and there's 20 of you that value losing weight, you stand a much better chance of losing weight. We live out our values better when we're banded together with other people that share those values. So if you're committed to loving kindness as a way of life, you might want to band together with some other people that are committed to loving kindness as a way of life. You could talk about it. You could encourage each other. When the chips are down and you feel like maybe this is a waste of time, somebody goes like, no, like I've done the math. This is the best way to live. And you go like, okay, let's keep going. That's how it works.
It's funny because I distinctly remember when I was a kid, my dad had a sermon series, and you know how you're a pastor and your dad was a pastor, so you know they're trying to come up with sermon titles that are catchy that people remember. I still remember this one to this day, and I'm pretty sure I was 10 years old. It was a 2-part sermon, and the title of the sermon was "How to Be Heavenly Minded and Earthly Good and Stay That Way." And even at 10 years old, deeply indoctrinated in evangelical fundamentalism, that stuck with me because it was about the earthly minded part that stuck with me. The heavenly part was like, oh yeah, well that's kind of far from the future. I don't really care about that. It's kind of like a life insurance policy, but how do I be earthly minded and make a difference in the world? And that kind of stuck in my brain all the way through to when I finally deconverted. And I was like, oh, well, I don't really need the heavenly minded part. I can still be earthly good. And that's what makes a big difference, you know?
That's how I got converted to Christianity, Phil. I was in high school and a buddy on my soccer team took me along to his youth group. And it was like the nicest group of people I had ever seen. They were very committed to reaching out to kids at our high school who were sad and lonely and left out, and at drawing them in and making them feel good about themselves. And I was a nice kid. And this group looked like a club for nice kids. Like I wanted to be earthly good, right? And this looked like a vehicle to be earthly good. And you go like, well, wait a second. So it wasn't Christianity that made you a nice person. No. It was being human that made me a nice person. It was being raised by humans, and it was having human instincts. And Christianity was a vehicle for that. And the problem is that it was a good vehicle in some ways, but in other ways, it forced me to believe things about my sexuality, about other people's sexuality, about other people's value, ultimate value, things about the world that just aren't true. And it became really, really problematic and difficult for me. But the initial motivation is that earthly goods thing. And by the way, not everybody has to be part of some community. There are some people who are autistic. There are some people who have been traumatized by relationships and they're not very comfortable in groups or not comfortable in close relationships. When I first became a secular humanist, I was trying to figure out what was the one best way to make the most of your life. Because although I was no longer Christian, I was still a fundamentalist, still looking for one way. It takes a long time for that instinct to die and to go like, wait a second, if there's nobody in charge, there may be a lot of different ways for people to make the most of their lives. And what the way for one person may be through artistic expression, and the way for somebody else might be through activism. And some people might be prone to have a lot of relationships. Some people might really struggle to have even one. Ultimately, you got to stop asking yourself, what's the way? And you got to start asking yourself, looking at an individual and going like, hey, given the cards you've been dealt, what's the best way you can play them? I do that in therapy all the time. Like, I don't have one answer. I'm looking at somebody and going like, hey, given who you are and what you care about and what works for you and what you're able to do, how do we make the best? And a lot of the people that come to me in therapy have way worse cards than I've got. They were dealt childhood sexual abuse. They were dealt physical trauma. Really tough stuff. And so it's not enough to just like, well, just join our group and love people.
Right.
Different things work for different people. But and that's why, honestly, I would probably look at Susie's parents and go like, probably given the cards that they're dealt, their best way to make it to the finish line is probably going to be to stay Christian.
Yeah.
And so the question is there a way that I can be a part of encouraging and shaping their Christianity in a more humanizing way? Is there a way that I can nudge them towards or expose them to things or ask them questions that are not about how not to be a Christian, but rather how to be the best kind of Christian? You know, like I got friends, you know, my friend Brian McLaren, you know, is a wonderful Christian speaker. And I got a lot of friends who are wonderful Christians. And I think like if you pull them in a back room and put a gun to their head, they're not sure that the story is true, but like that's their tribe. And they're trying to make Christianity safe for gay people. And they're trying to make Christianity safe for women.
Okay.
And you know what? I want to encourage them.
Yeah.
Because there are better and worse forms of Christianity. And, you know, I want your parents to be the best Christians that they can possibly be.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like I still kind of struggle with every once in a while because it's like, well, I don't want people to believe things that are harmful or that are just simply not true, because like when you come out of this belief system and you discover that a lot of what you believed was false, you kind of feel like it's your duty to like bring truth to other people.
Yeah.
Oh, bro.
So you have that evangelistic mindset, you know, it's kind of ingrained in you. So like that's part of where you get into that counter apologetics mindset or, you know, trying to change other people's minds.
Hey, and I got to be honest with you. It's really easy for me to say nice things about Susie's parents and how we should, you know, like when I walk by a daily vacation Bible school in the summertime and see them indoctrinating little kids into ideas of original sin, and like it horrifies me. It's child abuse in the worst degree. I want to burn it all down.
Right.
I don't want you to think that I'm not compromised on this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's a case by case situation, but yeah, I'm terrified. The thing that I hate most about the church and in our society is that it gives, I mean, I hate our whole society on the level of that they'll let anybody raise a child, and you can tell your kid any shit you want to tell them. You can tell your kid they're a piece of shit until they're 18 years old and no one will stop you. And you can tell your kid that God's going to kill everybody that doesn't believe some batshit crazy story, and they'll let you do it. And so I get really horrified at the indoctrination of children into Christianity. And that really upsets me deeply. And so it's easier for me to be gracious with people that are way down the road and also whose Christianity has not kept them from being kind.
Yeah.
You know,
and I think we both know Christians who are kind and loving. My best friend is studying to become an Episcopal priest. We've been best friends since 5th grade. And she keeps saying, I'm so happy that you don't believe in God, because to her, all that matters is that you transcend your reality and you find awe in something. And, you know, I find on the universe and how, like you said, how improbable everything is.
Oh, I love that woman.
We have this great relationship where we talk on the phone for hours and I'm just like, I'm so happy you believe in God. And she's like, I'm so happy you don't believe in God. And it's like this.
Bless her heart.
I wish it could be like that for everybody.
Right.
I was a youth pastor for 3 years in Minnesota, and I worked side by side with this beautiful woman named Lisa. And after, you know, I didn't publicize my deconversion at all, but when the word got out, then there were articles and all sorts of stuff. And she wrote me this letter and she said, I heard about you, heard about what happened. She said, I got to tell you, for 3 years, I watched you. And she said, you were such a good Christian and such a good youth pastor. But she said, it always felt like you were wearing clothes that didn't fit you just right. And you were always uncomfortable and shifting and moving and trying to figure it out.
Wow.
And she said, I listened to your podcast. And she said, you just seem so much more at ease in these clothes.
Yeah.
And she said, I'm really happy that you're where you belong.
Oh, that's nice.
This is a very lovely way of saying it. Like, I was just wearing the wrong clothes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if people viewed their lives like that, like where your whole identity and stuff wasn't wrapped up in your belief system, but instead on what you were putting back into the world, then you would probably have less conflict between Christians and non-Christians. And even amongst all the 40,000 denominations of Christianity, they're all fighting over this tiny bit of land, you know, to try to prove that they're right or prove that they're better. But they're missing the forest for the trees. You know, it's like we're going after this one thing to prove that we're right here, but you're missing out.
Speaking of trees, Phil, you know, Jesus once said that you know a tree by its fruit, that the fruit of the Spirit are love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, self-discipline. Against these things, there's no law. He said, you know a tree by its fruit. And one of the things that when you're talking to your parents that you need to say is, do you see my fruit withering? Like, am I less loving? Am I less kind? Am I less patient? Am I less caring? Am I less self-controlled? Because if you do, I need to know about it. But if you know a tree by its fruit, then what do you make of it when somebody is bearing really good fruit, but they don't have the right title.
Right.
So they're not the right species of tree for you. And that's the thing, you go like, wow, you really know your Bible. And I go like, yeah, I really do. I spent a lot of time with that sucker. But I think it's really good to ask questions. Ask the question, like, what do you make of this? Or is it possible that? Or could it be, rather than making firm statements or going like, don't you see the foolishness of this belief or that belief or the other belief? And again, like Anthony and people like that, they'll sometimes say like, you're soft, or you're like you're a compromiser, or you're a half stepper, or whatever it is. Not Anthony, he's lovely, but sometimes people will act as though it's my job to attack, and all I can say is, if I thought attacking was the best way to get people into a better way of life, I would do it. I'm just not convinced it accomplishes anything.
Yeah, we had a discussion about the idea of fruit related to something that Susie experienced over our break at a baby dedication. And the pastor kept saying, how do we know that Christianity is right? Because of the fruit. And my immediate thought was, well, the fruit I see from a lot of Christians is pretty shitty. So if you really want to go by the fruit, a lot of the right fruit is pretty rotten. And you see a lot of people that aren't religious, aren't Christian, their fruit is fantastic. I mean, you mentioned Hitler and Gandhi, like, who had the better fruit there?
Yeah, but Phil, what you need to understand about those bad Christians is that's not a bad reflection on God or Christianity. Those people aren't doing it right.
Right.
They're not doing it right.
You're not doing it right.
They're not the true Christians.
Right. Yeah. That's the infighting is very, I always find that amusing now. Of course, I didn't find it amusing when I was, in, but.
See, here's a thought. I used to think in grandiose terms, but now I just go like, you know what? If somebody who's listening to your podcast, if they decided to call up 3 or 4 of their friends who they think are lovely people and say, hey, I think you're a lovely person, and I'm trying to be a lovely person. I'm wondering, do you want to come over to my house on a Sunday evening once a month? We'll have some snacks, and then we'll just have an hour-long conversation about something that has to do with becoming a better person. Like, we'll just talk about like how we can be more forgiving, or how we deal with death. And we just work together. I'm like, I know we're all good people, but like, we never take an hour and a half and just have a focused conversation on being good, on making the most of our lives. I think if somebody did that once a month, it would probably have a more profound effect on their sense of spiritual identity, their secular spiritual identity, than all the arguments and books and Dawkins quotes. And I think that would be like a whole lot more constructive.
So you're more about the end product and the good fruit.
Well, we've been talking about this a bunch, and you've hit on it several times, the idea about morality being something that's human, and that goodness is a human quality. And I remember something, I think this was in the documentary, but after you told your parents that you didn't believe anymore, your mom said something to you like, or to your dad, the night after you told them, I think it was that Thanksgiving night or whatever, you told them. And, your dad was devastated, and your mom said to your dad later that night, I still see so much good in Bart, and how he loves his wife and how he loves his kids. How do you think that reconciles with them? Like, when you believe in a theology that says you can't be good without God, do you think I'm a bad person? No, but how could I be good if I don't have God? Like, how would you talk about that from your perspective?
Well, I mean, a lot of times when you ask people like that, they'll say like, yeah, you're still running on the fumes. You're still like, your morality was set in Christianity, like raise up a child in the way he should go live. And when he's old, he will not depart from it. And so like, they still take credit for it sometimes. Yeah. But I think that for the more thoughtful people, it's very troubling. And I've had some friends who have said, the most troubling thing about your deconversion is that you're the same person.
Somebody said that to you specifically?
Oh, all the time people say that to me. Yeah. Like, the most troubling thing about your deconversion is that, you cared about these things and you still care about them. And you took people in your homes and when they need a place to stay, and you still take people in your home when you need a place to stay. Like, You haven't changed any. And so we always thought that you were the way you were because you were like powered by the Holy Spirit, you're driven. But it turns out that that's just kind of like, that's just who you are.
Mm-hmm.
This is what one guy said. He's like, I always think you're a better Christian than I am. And he said, if you can be a better Christian than I am without believing in God, it kind of wipes out the whole idea that the Holy Spirit is the magic ingredient.
Right.
And so it's troubling to people.
Yeah.
And I'm not here to trouble people. I'm very cognizant of the fact that my time on this earth is short. And I really do want to make the most of it. And I genuinely am convinced that, I'm not just convinced, but like my experience has shown me that like all of the most exciting experiences of my life, all of the relationships that I remember, all of the experiences that I remember the most fondly are ones that reflect these values. That's where the joy has been in my life, is in relationships. And so, that's how I keep score. And there are other ways to keep score.
Yeah.
I don't piss on all of them. I know there are people for whom relationships aren't the thing. And I know that there are people for whom meaningful service to others isn't the thing. But for like the vast majority of human beings, that's what causes them to thrive. For me, I just think like that's just a way of life that I'm very evangelical about it.
Yeah.
Much more than like, don't believe in God because that'll make your life better.
Yeah.
Because I haven't seen not believing in God make anybody's life better all by itself.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen it as a part of a larger package.
Right, right. To circle back to what you said about your goal is not to trouble people, do you think there's any value in identifying that troublingness? That's not a word, but like once you get someone to that point where they can see that disconnect in the way you're living and bearing fruit as a non-believer, and then maybe their lives not showing the same amount of fruit or the same kind of fruit, and that cognitive dissonance that's twinging at them right there, is there any value in pointing that out? Like, and how would you do that? And like, if you get someone that says to you, you're a better Christian than I am, if they're on the verge of kind of discovering that leaving their belief in God is going to be beneficial to them, is that something that you would encourage them to do, or is that's not really in your...
You guys are parents. I know you're a parent, right, Phil?
Yes.
We both are, yeah.
Yeah, we both are.
Are your kids of dating age yet?
No, thank God.
No.
There'll come a moment when they're dating somebody who's not good for them.
Right.
And if you directly attack that person, they will defend that person and you will go down. So there comes a point at which, you want to spot the discontent and go like, hey, how do you think Joe makes you a better person? Or like, I know you're into him, but like, what exactly is it that you like about him? There are all sorts of good questions you can ask, like, especially when somebody is, they're wavering. They're not sure.
Yeah.
And so like, that's what you do. You spot the weakness and you don't go in and pound it. You poke around.
Yeah.
And as a parent, you learn that like questions tend to work better than statements.
So you and Anthony both on the questioning.
Yeah. It's the same idea. It's kind of like leading them to their own conclusion as opposed to telling them what the conclusion is. Like,
but you choose the questions based on what you see, where you see the pain, where you see the trouble, where you see the uncertainty. But I think the main thing is you want to be leading somebody in a direction that's for their good rather than leading them in a direction that affirms your position, like, or that makes you feel good. So like the question is, are you trying to mess with this person's faith because you think it's hurting them or because it offends you?
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Ultimately we tend to love best when we love a person on the basis of who they are rather than on the basis of who we're trying to make them become.
Which is actually the loving thing to do. Let them be who they are as opposed to who you think that they should be. I
mean, there's a time to strong arm somebody out of a bad situation. I don't have any absolutes on this. Like there are times to directly attack things, and there are times to question things. And there are times to argue, and there are times to make bold statements. That shouldn't be your first instinct.
Yeah.
Earlier, you said that indoctrination was tantamount to child abuse.
Yeah.
So in light of what you just said, what about two parents who are happy in Christianity, but they have a child they're indoctrinating, and this child is related to you? How do you weigh those two things, and how do you handle that? Because it hurts me to see that child being indoctrinated. But at the same time, before this child was born, I never had a problem with the parents being Christian because they're wonderful people. Right. And they're loving.
There's no force less likely to be overcome than two loving Christian parents telling their kids about the loving Jesus, because like, again, the kid has no reason not to buy this. It's all working in our family. It's all true. Ultimately what you want to do is you want to be really clear about who you are. Like, you don't want to attack their thing. But you want to sort of go like, when the kid says to you, like, isn't it wonderful that Jesus loves us? And you go like, you know what? I know that's what your mom and dad and you buy into and or believe. And a lot of people believe that. And it might be true. But, it's funny, like there are people who believe differently, that think differently. I'm one of them. The most you can hope for when both parents are allied that way, the most you can hope for as an aunt or as a neighbor or as a friend is to stand as a clear example so that nobody can tell them that apart from Jesus, everybody's mean, everybody's horrible.
Yeah.
I think that's the most you can do.
Okay.
And again, like you go like, well, you seem to be willing to accept that people are allowed to take these children and indoctrinate them and destroy their life, and set them up for all sorts of sexual and existential, worries later in their life. Like I know that's because that's the truth.
We don't really have any other choice.
You don't have any other choice.
I think this is a really fun conversation. We appreciate you joining us. And
yeah, you're most welcome.
Do you want to tell real quickly before you go, just the things that where people can find you and connect with you?
I mean, if you Google my name, you'll find me. If you hit the contact Bart, I'll get the email. And if you want to listen to my podcast where I have a better voice than the one you're hearing tonight, it's called Humanize Me. But I'm just grateful to talk to you. And I'm glad that you're talking about good things with good people.
Thank you. We're the ones who are grateful. This has been so amazing.
Okay, well, that was a really awesome conversation. We
want to
wrap it up with some final thoughts. I'm not sure I can even wrap my head around like what all just went down, because like
he exceeded expectations. We'll say that.
It was like a really like flowing conversation. I thought like, we barely scratched the surface of what we had in our notes. It was like a conversation like you would have with somebody that you knew for like 10 years. Like that's how it felt. Like it was like, he wasn't afraid to like challenge us on our points, like at all, which I thought
and I love that,
which I thought was cool. Cause he's like, no, I don't know if we really want to go that route, which I thought
also
was
kind
cool.
Of terrifying.
Yeah, I know. What were like some things that kind of stuck out to you?
Yeah, well, I guess you could tell that my main focus was like how to deal with family. When you're coming out of religion and the rest of your friends and family are religious, and not only are they religious, but they're the fundamental type of people where there's only one way.
Right.
And if you deviate from that path, you're lost. You're damned to hell. You're a sinner.
Right.
And so when I was first coming out of religion, I armed myself with information, like bullet points, memorizing, evidence. This is why I'm not wrong. This is why I'm not lost. I had to be able to defend myself or like justify my position.
Right.
I haven't used any of that information, by the way, like in my everyday life. So it's been useless. But Bart's approach is so different.
Yeah.
He basically is saying like, it doesn't matter what my reasons are. I don't believe it and I can't believe it.
Right.
And then he followed up with these verses about God saving everyone.
Right.
And he has, verses in the Bible to back that up.
Yeah.
And so I just think it's a really interesting way to go about it. And it's a way to get everyone to agree to disagree. Things will shake out in the end. And I think it's a hard place for both parties to get to, but it's probably worth it if we can get there.
Yeah. And I think that approach like definitely could work with certain types of parents. Like, I don't know how your parents feel about would feel about the verses of where it says, eventually everyone's going to come to Christ. Like, I think for most evangelical Christians, they would say, yeah, but that means when those people come to Christ, it's too late for them. It's like at the end of the tribulation and like, they're still not going to go to heaven, So I understand what he was saying. And I really like the scriptures that he used, like having a good command of the scriptures is definitely useful. And the thing that I got about that point was, just like in any other situation, like having a bunch of facts and figures almost never convinces anybody. Like if you're in convincing mode or counter apologetic mode, which I was really into apologetics as a Christian. So it makes sense that as a non-Christian that you would kind of use the same tactics.
Right. It's just the other side.
Yeah, just the other side. So, and you being like a data person.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Facts and figures. It's like, that's your personality. So it makes perfect sense that you would. So like doing it a different way that's more relational is like counterintuitive, especially because a lot of us haven't really been taught how to actually have a healthy relationship with someone we don't agree with.
Do you think your parents could get there? Could they ever get to a place where they accept that you don't believe this stuff, you never will, but God will take care of you in the end. It's his responsibility now, that type of thing.
Yeah, I think that they would probably say, okay, fine. But I think deep inside, they would still believe that, well, I'm lost and you'll find out in the end. And yes, we hope you're right, but we know you're not. Honestly, I think I would have a hard time even saying like what Bart was saying, oh, that God, can't you believe that God's big enough and that he'll work it out in the end? Because like, I know why he's saying it, but I don't think I could say that authentically.
Because you don't believe in God?
Yeah, because I just don't believe that it's going to work out at the end, with even if I was wrong, okay, great, but it really doesn't matter. I don't feel that I could be authentic and say, maybe for the sake of conversation, I could say it, but I wouldn't really believe it,
Yeah.
For the sake of keeping the peace, I would actually more appreciate it if my parents would listen to some of my reasons and not try to counter the reasons, but just say, okay, well, we understand where you're coming from and we still love you and care about you and we're not going to treat you any different. That would be
ideal.
That would be ideal, like if it could work that way. But I don't know that that's possible. I mean, I've had some very minimalistic conversations with my mom about some things.
Yeah.
Saying things to the effect of, well, what about if you took God out of the equation in this particular situation? Or things that are in the political arena. Well, can you see why I couldn't get on board with your rabid support of Trump? Like, does that make sense to you at all? Like that sort of thing.
The questions that you're asking reminds me of what Bart was saying. Like, do you think it's possible that?
Yeah, like what would happen if? Like a lot of like kind of what if questions. Like
like just questioning, which is what Anthony does too, but they still have a very different approach.
Yeah, different approach. Yeah.
Yeah. I think Anthony is trying to deconvert people just in a really gentle way. And Bart doesn't want to. Yeah,
Bart actually came right out and said, like, I don't want to pull people away from their faith. If there's some purpose that their faith is serving.
They're getting value from it and they're not hurting anyone.
Right.
But the thing is that or anytime a Christian has a kid, that kid's probably going to be indoctrinated. And to me, that's harmful.
Yeah, that's the problem I have too.
Right. Like, how do you draw the line of, that person over there is happy as a Christian and then they have 5 babies and indoctrinate 5 children.
Right. That the child indoctrination piece, he definitely seemed to be on the same page as us about too. You could almost see the fury building in him, like when we got to that topic.
I wanted to ask him if he was indoctrinated as a kid, because in his book, he said that he wasn't even a Christian until he was a teenager and went to youth group. And it was totally unrelated to his dad being his big time preacher.
Right.
Which, by the way, we never really talked about all that much about his dad.
No, we didn't.
Listeners might be confused about that.
Yeah, we didn't.
His dad is this big time evangelical preacher who knew Clinton and was friends with Clinton. And
knew a lot of presidents. And
he was just huge. And Bart grew up in his shadow. So I think it was kind of nice that we didn't really talk about him, but it's a big part of the story for him.
So the other thing that also jumped out at me was like the perpetual smile on his face when he talked about certain topics. You could tell that he just like had a real like authentic joy about connecting with people. He was like sick and didn't feel good. And he still gave us all that time and was still talked. He definitely has like a gift of having that like listening ear. I don't consider myself a good listener because I'm always
talking.
I'm always talking for one. And I'm always thinking ahead of what I'm going to say back to the person who's talking.
I don't think I could do what he does in terms of working with people and helping people reach their fullest potential.
Yeah.
I just don't find myself caring that much about other people. And that's a bad thing to say, but like I care more about the environment or the earth and animals. I don't know. It's just a different focus. Yeah. I feel like it's not a worse focus. It's just a different focus. So I couldn't do what he does.
Yeah, it's definitely something that the world needs too. Like his skill set and his personality and just everything that he's doing, it's like perfectly suited for who he is. So a couple other things. At some point, I'm not sure he originated this phrase, but he was saying, loving that you need to love people for who they are, not for who you want them to be. It's hard to love someone right where they are.
Yeah.
That's just a hard thing to do. So it's impressive the way he kind of tries to do that with everybody.
The whole overarching theme of this all reminds me of like if, a parent is against homosexuality, but then they have a gay child. And now suddenly they're faced with that. And what's bending is their understanding of homosexuality.
Right.
They eventually choose their kid.
Right.
And I feel like that's the same process with what we have to go through with our families. Is that they think, atheists are XYZ until they have an atheist in their family, and then they have to reevaluate.
Yeah, or morality in general. Like,
yes,
his parents realize, well, Bart is still a genuinely good person. He goes out and he actually lives the life that Jesus talked about, helping the poor, letting people stay in his house. Like, when people see that, that actually says much more than any counter apologetic argument you could do. It's how you live your life.
Yeah.
And so it makes me think of, like, there was some missionary that used to say, preach the gospel wherever you go, and if necessary, use words. To me, it's like the same thing with atheism or humanism. It's like, okay, go preach humanism, and where necessary, use words.
Yeah. He has a whole chapter in his book when he goes into morality and why we don't need God to be good and why people are moral.
Right.
Oh, I would have loved to talk to him about that. There were so many things I wanted to talk to him about that we didn't get to talk about.
Maybe we'll luck out and be able to have him back again and talk to him again. That would be really cool.
He's a great human.
Yeah, he is.
I think there is one last thought that I have. There's this us versus them mentality with Christians and non-believers and within our families. And I really hate that. And I don't know how to get rid of it. But I think that Bart holds some of the key to how to close that gap and make it just all us. So that's something I'm going to ruminate on and work on. And I hope our listeners get something out of that too, because I'm sure that the vast majority of our listeners have religious family and we're all having these same problems.
It's a real hard thing. So I think, what Bart does definitely teaches like a skill of how to bridge that gap.
Yeah, it's hard though. I mean, it's a lot of sacrifice on both sides. Yeah. A lot of sacrifice.
Yeah, because it's really hard. I mean, I think no one likes to admit being wrong.
Yeah, right. But I think with Bart's method, in quotes, method, neither side has to say they're wrong. Right. It's more like an agree to disagree type scenario. And I think that is really helpful for erasing that line between us. Yeah. There shouldn't be a line just because they believe in an invisible deity and we don't. Like, that is such a random thing to draw a line on. What if it's like pickles? Who likes pickles? Right. People over here like pickles, people over here don't, and we can't mix. Yeah. So Humanize Me is the name of the podcast. BartCampolo.org is his website. And then we would definitely encourage you guys to read the book that he wrote with his dad, Tony Campolo, who's a world famous evangelist. Why I Left, Why I Stayed is the name of the book. And then the documentary that they made about both of them is called Leaving My Father's Faith. It's really engaging just to see them interact, because even though they're on such like opposite sides, you can really see them working together. Definitely watch that movie because it's pretty cool, like, just to see. And if you have, like Susie and I, parents that are still believers, it definitely gives you some insights of like, well, maybe we can have a reasonable conversation with our parents at some point. I think it would be a good one to watch with your parent if they're open to it. Yeah. If you could pull that off, that would be really cool. Like goals. Yeah. It's a future goal of mine. Yeah. Thanks for listening to the Flawed Theology podcast. I'm Phil. And I'm Susie. Tune in next time where we will continue to tackle the question, if your theology were wrong, wouldn't you want to know? Make sure to follow us on the various social media platforms and listen to us on any place that you find a podcast, Apple Podcasts, Google, Spotify. Connect with us on the Facebook group, which is called Dangerous Questions. And we'd love to connect with you there. If you do have flawed theology in real life stories or good human stories, please send them our way as well, and we will talk to you next time. Do you guys watch movies down there? What do you mean, down there? That big screen. Yeah, I see a big screen behind you. Oh, yeah. I thought you meant like down here in Virginia, like I'm like 4,000 miles away from you. But do you have the technology? Do you guys got them there movies down there in Ruckersville? Wow, your accent. That's really good. That's top notch. Yeah, that's top notch Greene County right there.
Yeah, I was worried that I wasn't dressed appropriately, but then when I saw your cat sheet, I thought, I'm all right. Yeah, no, you're good. Professionalism is not something we strive for on this show, so.
and this episode will be out in the very near future.
What does that mean?
This is not going to be in the recording at all, because by the time you're listening
I'm
to
gonna
this...
cut this out.
No, you should just put it at the end, you know. By the time you listen to this, it'll already be out. It's like talking to a time warp. All right. Well, that's all I've got. We already have the ending recorded, right?
Yeah.
We did that on the...
Yeah.
Okay.
All we need to do now is stop talking.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm going to just pour this water on my head then.
Okay.
Let me stop the recording.